This podcast is sponsored by the Fireman Moving Company. The Fireman Moving Company is the official moving company of WKU Athletics. Not only can they be trusted to move all the coaches in and out of Western, but they can move you anywhere nationwide. The Fireman Moving Company is owned and operated by firemen and is founded by WKU alumni. If you're looking to move sometime soon, give them a call at 270-791-1755 and get yourself a free quote. Welcome to Topper Talk, your number one Western Kentucky athletics podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Moffitt, and I'm joined by co-host Tyler Bailey. Hilltopper Nation, whether it's happening on the hill or on the road, grab those red towels, stand up and cheer, because it's up next on Topper Talk. All right, welcome back, and thank you for downloading and listening to another episode of the Topper Talk podcast. We are the official podcast of the Red Towel Trust Collective, and we are proud member and WKU representative of the College Huddle podcast community. As always, make sure you're following us on all our social media accounts, our YouTube channel, just staying up to date with all the news, info, stats, and episodes as we post them. And I know in that intro, it says I'm joined by co-host Tyler Bailey, but today I've got a couple new faces across for me, some old friends, some old rivals from the former Conference USA years and our former Moonshine Throwdown podcast affiliation. So first I'll start with, I've got Trace Johnson with me, who was the Marshall representative of the former Moonshine Throwdown podcast. Trace, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
And then I've got the man behind the yellow curtain. We're pulling it back. This is this is a first ever video episode, I'm pretty sure, with all three of us on the screen. The founder of the Moonshine Throwdown social media accounts, the Moonshine Throwdown podcast that he ran for a lot of years, and that Trace and I joined him for several of those towards the end before the move by Marshall to the Sun Belt Conference and conference realignment. And now this rivalry has kind of fizzled away to we hope and wish that it would be on the schedule on a regular basis. But now we're back. The basketball game has been set. It's on the calendar, and now we're just days away from that being played. So I've got to also welcome my good friend, podcast mentor, and just all around good guy, Kenny KD. Welcome to the show, man. Appreciate you joining us.
Man, it's
Give
pretty
him his
awesome.
flowers.
Yeah, well, look, whatever, right? Like, first of all, I appreciate it. Super cool to be a guest on this show. First time I believe I've been a guest on this show. But look, man, the Moonshine Throwdown is not mine. It belongs to the people, right? The people made it what it was. I was just merely a vehicle to stir the pot. As Moff likes to say, I was just the straw that stirs the drink, right? But it is great to have Western Kentucky and Marshall on the schedule, facing each other again. I know there's a lot of fans out there that love this matchup. They love it. And it doesn't really matter what sport it is right now. There's a good section of each fan base that just wants these games to happen because of how much fun and how intense football games were, men's basketball games were. It spanned several sports, and it got heated for a hot minute, man. It was a lot of fun. So I'm glad this one's back on the schedule. We got to get more games on the schedule. I hope we dive into that a little bit, not just talking basketball. So I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but I will say this, it's just really great to be on your show. I think you do a phenomenal job with the Topper Talk podcast. I'm really glad you just did not decide to hang up the microphone, so to speak. You do a great job. Western Kentucky fans are blessed to have a guy that cares as much about Hilltopper athletics as you do, and puts the time and commitment into bringing a quality show. That's big time. There's a lot of fan bases across the country that don't have this type of thing, and Western Kentucky has it. And I like to think Marshall has it too, but that's another story for another time. But I'm damn glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here as well. And I gave you your flowers because without you and your push, there is no Topper Talk. I probably would have hung it up. I would have retired. I would have did myself a disservice. But you gave me that push, and here we are. A year and a half later, Tyler and I have been doing this, and approaching our 100th episode. I think we'll hit that in early January, at our current recording schedule. But It's crazy. Time flies. And, as I look back, I went, had to go back and see when was the last time we put out an episode, us three, Moonshine Throwdown. It was December 17th, 2021. It was the App State Bowl recap where we just went and absolutely obliterated them. Bailey Zappi broke the all-time single season yards and passing touchdown records. And at that point, the news was official. Marshall was leaving Conference USA. They were moving on to the Sun Belt Conference, to greener pastures, with all the realignment, shuffling, and just craziness that's was going on then, and still continues today. But Trace, I'll refer to you now. What does having this rivalry back, on the schedule and just days away from being played, what's that mean to you and other Marshall fans?
Oh man, it's awesome. It's awesome. It just brings just sitting. That's what I said to you all. Just us sitting on here, us three together. It's just like so awesome and so reminiscent. It's just like that was such a good era when we all did this and like consistently and stuff. And like and this was for Conference USA for a good while. This was a phenomenal rivalry. I mean, it really was. Every game seemingly in. Especially basketball and football, both really had a lot of stakes, and that's what made it so good. And the fans really got into it and were invested in it. And like it really, I mean, we settled championship games with this rivalry. So I mean, it doesn't get much higher stakes than that. So it was awesome. I'm glad we're back on here doing this, and very different places both programs are right now compared to where they were a few years back when we were doing it. So that's more the kind of stuff we're going to dive into on here. But yeah, I'm excited to be back on here talking about it.
Yeah, playing for championships. It's crazy how many times we cross paths in both football and basketball. And I find it real interesting that back when we first got together, 2014, in the early years of our rivalry, our historical relevance, both of us kind of flipped. We were really good historically in basketball, but we ran the conference in football for a couple of years. You all obviously have just an incredible legacy of football and one of the greatest comeback stories, of all time. Obviously, I think that speaks for itself. But you all were really good in basketball for several years. And I think, but both of our teams and programs, across the board were always competitive, always really good, always fielding, championship level teams. And that made the matchups that much more important. Football, especially, it came down several times to our game decided who was going to win the East and represent the conference for the conference title game. And then in basketball, I mean, everything from John Elmore daggers in the conference tournament to, the Josh Anderson dunk heard around the world.
I knew that was coming.
The Lamonte Bearden rim out. I mean, how did that?
Yeah.
I still go back and watch that. And if he shoots that 100 times, it goes in 99 times out of 100. The one time it came out, led to us not making an NCAA trip. You all obviously made your first trip in 30 years and just added to what already was an incredible rivalry in such a short span. There were just so many moments and games and faces and players and just so much importance. And I'm really glad that we got to highlight it. And Katie, I know you have more thoughts about it. What does it mean from your perspective? You've obviously continued on with Marshall podcasting with the Thundercast pod. Yeah, I know there's a lot of conference realignment whispers and rumors. We've got UTEP leaving Conference USA. There's whispers of New Mexico State, talking and looking elsewhere. Texas State has been flirted with a few times. So there's still some shuffling to be done. But what's it feel like from your perspective, having this game back on the schedule?
Well, it's one that fans care about, I think, even in an out-of-conference setting, because it's one of those teams. Marshall's got a few they're always going to matter. If they have Ohio University on the schedule, that one's going to matter to a lot of fans. They're the historic rival, and we've traded blow after blow after blow throughout the years and the decades. And and Western Kentucky, I think, is now one of those teams, especially for the Conference USA era of fan that was a student then and now is becoming a young alumnus or was a young alumnus then and is now a little bit older. They really grew to appreciate that. And I think some of the older fans of my era really, really wrapped their arms around hating Western Kentucky. I mean, they really did. I mean, I saw it firsthand. I'm the guy that had to walk the middle of the road. I had the only experience that any other fan had associated with this rivalry, right? Because I had to walk both sides of it, and I really saw it from both sides firsthand, and it mattered. And just to have the game back, people care. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, and you can probably echo these thoughts, how many times when you get on the subject of football scheduling and we have an open date here and they're open here, why isn't Marshall on the schedule? I watched the episode that you did with athletic director, with your athletic director, and you asked him straight up, are we trying to get Marshall back on the schedule? And he was like, well, we're open. We're open to anything. We'd love to do that. The fans like that game. I think it matters. And in this day and age, when the haves and have-nots just get further and further separated, you want to latch on to those things that fans care about, because now more than ever, it's about getting asses in seats at games and putting games on schedules that fans care about and will show up for. So having this game, even if it's one basketball game, that's a start. That's a start. And if we show up on Saturday and you guys show up on Saturday and we just have this instant classic type game, I think that says a lot about what this could be. And even if it's this blowout one way or the other, I think it's going to fuel that fire of like, oh man, now we got to get them back on the schedule because now we owe them one, or however it goes. You can just sum it up by saying it matters. When the schedule came out, people looked up and down and they said, all right, out of conference, what are we looking at? All right, Marshall's got Purdue. That's a big game. That's a top 10 team. That's a big one, right? And you guys have University of Kentucky. That's a big one. You care about that. And then you go, oh, Marshall's got Western on the schedule. We care about that one. Western's like, we got Marshall in diddle. We're going to put it on the herd. Like that. I know that's what the feeling was. It had to have been. So you can sum it up by just saying it matters, and it's good to have it back.
Yeah, it matters. It's good to have it back. Like you said, I know looking at both of our ADs, Todd Stewart, Christian Spears, like we are looking at you this game, and across the board, all sports, really. I mean, you look at what the Sun Belt Conference has done as far as regional rivalries and just teams that are close to each other, easy to travel to. It's going to boost your attendance, makes, getting to away games a lot easier. This is a game and a team and a program that is, I think it's a 4-hour trip from here. It's been a few years since I've made the trip, but this is one our fans care about. We want to see it played. There are open dates on football. Like you said, we a couple times me and you have penciled him in like, man, 26, 27 right there.
I had the home and home series set, man. All I needed was the ADs to high five and sign the paper. I mean,
rubber stamp this, please. But luckily, we do have a return game, so there will be a return basketball game at the Cam Henderson Center next year. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but this is not just a one-off. It will be a home and home for both of us, starting this year, obviously in Bowling Green, Kentucky at Diddle Arena. The game is this Saturday. It's November 30th. It's at 7 p.m. It's going to be on ESPN Plus, so it should be pretty easily viewable to everyone that is interested. I find it interesting, as I started to look into these teams and just their schedule. It's interesting that both of our teams are breaking in new coaches. WKU right now this year is 3-3. We just played last night that game against University of Kentucky. Took a tough loss. They're really good. They're a top 10, top 5 caliber team with a new coach themselves. Marshall, as we record, is 3-2 on the season, also breaking in a new coach, but both of us are kind of doing that for different reasons. We had Rick Stansberry for a lot of years who just never got us over that hump, brought in a lot of talent, a lot of big names, several 4-stars, came to Bowling Green, Kentucky, kind of crazy. But he could never get over that, NCAA tournament, that conference championship hump. Coaching wise, he was just kind of an average coach. And I think that's a fair criticism now, especially in hindsight. Talent-wise, we should have won the conference every year by far, but just never got it done. We brought in Coach Steve Lutz last year, who was just an instant breath of fresh air. Put the roster together, used the transfer portal very well, and then ran, had a good conference season. Was 8-8 in conference, but then got to Huntsville in the conference tournament and just had that magical 4-day run that, it had been a long time since we had felt that magic, got back to the NCAA tournament. And then he's plucked away, what happens when you win too much. The symptom of that is your coaches get plucked away, your players get plucked away. We see it happen in multiple sports. So we were in the coaching search again for the second off season. We promote Hank Plona, who was a longtime JUCO head coach at Indian Hills, very successful, won 86% of his games. So now, new head coach in his first year, 3-3 so far. Whereas Marshall also had longtime coach Dan D'Antoni, obviously won a conference title. It seems like it wasn't that long ago, but it was now several years ago. I forget if that was 16 or 17?
17, I think.
18.
18,
okay.
18, 17, 18.
Oh, yeah, 17, 18, yeah.
And I remember telling you when it happened, I remember telling Trey specifically, I was like, soak this in because these are rare. And,
I remember.
The years will fly by. I remember the Sweet 16 run of our basketball team, which seems like it was yesterday, but it was 12 plus years ago now at this point. So it's just crazy. But obviously the Dan D'Antoni era just kind of wound down. I guess he obviously didn't win as much in the later years, and you all had to replace him. I don't remember the exact how that went down. Trace, you can fill us in, but I know that you all also promoted your associate head coach, Cornelius Jackson, to the head coaching position. So I guess, Trace, talk to us about that, just about the the last few years while we haven't been associated and in conference together, just how that D'Antoni era went down and the hiring of Cornelius Jackson as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a disappointing finish for him. I mean, after the conference title in 18 and making the big dance and winning a game there and stuff, you really thought, okay, this program has made it now. They really won really good. And in the next year, like, they didn't make it back to the big dance, but they still ended up winning 23 basketball games and won a postseason tournament. But so that was still, anytime you win 23 basketball games, that's a good year. So they were really playing well up to that point. And then the next year after that, they lost the majority of their production, and pretty much everybody was gone. And they still managed to be very competitive in Conference USA. And I don't know, nobody's going to know how it would go now because of COVID, but they were playing really well into that conference tournament that year and actually won a first round game, and they were playing well. So that was, that could have been a potential decent run there if they went on. And then the next year they were good, but they just got bounced early in the tournament. Then the move to the Sun Belt had a lot of people kind of questioning how it would go, because the Sun Belt was more known for football, and they still are more known for football, but men's basketball was sort of starting to turn a corner a little bit. And Marshall, year one, they went in there and they had everything right there in front of them. All they had to do was win the last game of the regular season in the 22-23 year, and they would have been regular season Sun Belt champs year one. But unfortunately, they lost and then got bounced early in the conference tournament. So that team right there, in my opinion, that team was probably better top to bottom than the 2018 team that made it to the big dance. That team really should have been the team that got it done, possibly could have won more than one game in the NCAA tournament if they got a good draw. But unfortunately, we'll never know, because they just kind of flamed out at the end. And that was his last, in my opinion, his last chance to really make some major noise. And unfortunately, they just fell flat on their face to end the year, which was very disappointing. And then last year they didn't have much really. I mean, they some guys came in, like Nate Martin was a beast last year, and he's still here this year. But you could tell they had already reached their peak, and now they were kind of starting to fall off. And Dan has, for as much great as he did for Marshall through and through, it was just time to move on. I mean, he'd been there forever. Well, not forever, but it felt like forever. And, it was just time to move into a little different direction. And Corny's been on staff for years now, and he knows Marshall through and through, is just like Dan did. So it was a good move, safe move. But yeah, I mean, right now they're kind of in a weird place. Like I was telling you, Steven, I said they're kind of it's like I don't know. There's a certain level of apathy, I think, going right now. I can't speak for everybody, but I think Katie could you can kind of see where I'm coming at with that. Like there's a little bit of like, okay, like if they win or if that's good, if they don't win, that's good too. So like I feel like they need something to kind of like break out of that. Like because like Marshall's right now centered around football and men's soccer. That's what it is. And men's basketball has to get women's basketball was great last year, but like the men's basketball team has to get it turned back around. And I think they will. It's not going to happen overnight. I mean, it's going to take a couple years for him to get all the pieces in place that he wants. But men's basketball needs to be good. I mean, it needs to be good. It needs to be successful. It needs to put butts in seats for the betterment of the athletic department, point blank. I mean, it's the second biggest drawing sport that they have. So it needs to be good. So I think it will be. It just this year, I don't know what they're going to have yet, quite frankly, because it's too early to tell. I think we'll know more by Sunbelt play, what they have. But it's an interesting time right now for men's basketball. I will say that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say women's basketball is pretty good. I'm still a regular listener to the Thundercast podcast, and yeah, they were really good last year. And now every once in a while I get curious now early in the season. I'll peek over at how the UT women are doing, and I see them scoring 100+ points, and I'm like, it translates. That's good basketball. It translates. Now, Katie, I want to get your thoughts on the hiring or the promotion of Cornelius Jackson. I remember hearing you all talk about it on your podcast when it was in limbo. And then the whispers of promoting him, from the outside, I thought the easy grab was, A.W. Wells there at EKU, also, a Marshall alum. I didn't know as much about Cornelius Jackson, but it seems to be a good hire on paper. I guess tell us about your thoughts on that hire and just the end of the D'Antoni era.
Well, okay. First of all, I got to talk about Dan because I absolutely love Dan. Love him as a guy, just a guy. I think there is not a coach you would rather talk to because he is just an open book. If you, Steven, walked up to Dan D'Antoni and just started shooting the breeze with him, it would be like you guys knew each other for years. He is just a great guy to talk to. He accomplished a lot of great things. You're talking about having the guys that set the all-time scoring record twice. At Marshall. John Elmore did it, and then Tavion Kinsey did it. Both those guys were under Dan D'Antoni. And the leading, I don't know how many. It's like 4 or 5 of the top 10 leading scorers of all time were Dan D'Antoni players. That you can't just toss that to the wayside. It was exciting basketball. Fans showed up. The cam stayed full a lot. It's just at the end, they weren't winning enough, and I say that by the Herd winning 24 games the year before Dan's last year, right. So you're in a precarious situation. If you're the athletic director, you might want to make a change, but now your men's basketball coach just sets a record for wins or wins the most games in like freaking, 30 years or something like that. So what are you supposed to do? But moving on to Corny, Coach Jackson, also a Herd alum, like you mentioned. He's from my era. We were students at the same time. So that's a name that I've known for 25 years. And he's been an assistant, a top assistant. He's been in the game for a long time. And he's just like Dan in the sense that he eats, sleeps, breathes Marshall men's basketball. The other things that you get when you hire a guy like Corny is, of course, the basketball knowledge. That's a given. You don't hire a guy that doesn't know the game. He's younger. He gets these kids a little bit more than Dan. Dan, hey, it's hard to be 70-some years old and relate to an 18, 19-year-old kid. It just is. So you get that factor. You get the factor of the alumni around the program, guys like J.R. Van Hoos, a guy I know you know that name, an all-time Kentucky basketball, high school Kentucky basketball great. You get those guys energized in the program again, coming back again. And it's like the big family again. You get them involved in the program. So the support amongst the alumni is there. Marshall just got a commitment there a couple of weeks ago from Bryce Slay, who is the son of all-time great Tamar Slay. So now you're getting that second generation Marshall player coming in, just like we're seeing with football. And Trace is right. Corny can win at Marshall because Dan won at Marshall. So can Corny, right? It's just a matter of, can you get enough pieces in a quick amount of time to do it? Because now you guys know more than anybody. You can turn it around in a year with the right coach. You can go from struggling and mediocre to a tournament team in a year. You guys did it. I don't think Corny's going to do that this year. I could be wrong. He added some pieces. We had some really great returning pieces. You know, Trace mentioned Nate Martin. He's basically Mr. Double-Double. He's good for that damn near every game. And I'm sure we'll talk about Obina coming, two guys down low that are massively impactful. What Dan was missing in those latter years was that stud point guard, the John Elmore type. We had Andy Taylor. He hit the portal, and that was a huge piece. That if you pair Andy Taylor with senior Tavion Kinsey, Marshall probably goes to the dance. But he left. Yeah. He hit the portal and left. And you struggle. You lose a guy the year before that in Jared West. He goes to Louisville. You know, just a bulldog of a defender, right? And you lose guys like that year after year after year. It's hard to replace players of that caliber all the time. And for all the great things that Dan was able to do, he could not replace those guys on a year-over-year basis to just remain as competitive as we wanted to be. But it's a breath of fresh air in Huntington right now. I think there is a certain level of energy around the program. Trace is right. It's Herd fans are fickle. You know, it's like, you win and then I'll show up more. That's just how they are. So it's a catch-22 situation. I feel like if more fans would show up and the CAM would be a tougher place to play, you would probably win more games. But more fans want to win first before they show up. So it's chicken and egg, that type of thing. It'll happen. You know, it'll happen. I think Corny can get this team to a tournament. Win. That's the question. Win.
It's fun reminiscing on some of those names. Tavion Kinsey, I remember him and Josh Anderson, just every game, they were highlight dunks. You're guaranteed you're going to get at least one from both of them. Andrew Taylor, I remember that name. Jared West, we actually got to play him. When he went to Louisville. We played Louisville over the last few years and saw that face, that name on the lineup. I know that guy. He is a tough defender. He was just a lockdown, full court pressure, going to be in your face, and you're going to know he's there, man. Just like y'all said, a lot of good names and players and talent, and just it's a different world these days. Like you said, retaining your own talent that you recruit and just help get better and improve their game. All of a sudden, they're attractive options in the basically a free agent market, and it's tough. And not like you said, I think bringing in a fresh coach, a little bit younger guy that can connect better than maybe D'Antoni did is going to be a breath of fresh air and just help that recruiting, help that retention. You've already seen it, with that second generation commitment and Slay. So really looking forward to, I'm keeping up from afar, regardless whether we play every single year, if we're in the same conference or not. I'm keeping up just because I like to stay a little bit vested in it. Now, I want to talk about the recent Marshall season. Last season, you all went 13-20. You were 7-11 in Sun Belt Conference play, with your season ending with a loss to James Madison in the second round of the Sun Belt Conference tournament. Obviously, I guess that coming up short, that overall record, likely, just a few years of just not being as good as you felt that you should be. That is going to lead to that coaching change that we just talked about. I guess, Trace, talk to me about how you feel Cornelius Jackson did as far as building his staff and, his first, off season of, hitting the portal, finding players to plug holes, hopefully keeping some guys. You talked about Nate Martin is coming back this year, so obviously held on to some talent. How did Cornelius Jackson do with his first off season, building his staff and building his roster?
I mean, I think staff-wise, he really did a great job. I mean, I think he's got a great staff. I mean, it's like, the guy, it's like Katie was saying, like, if the guy knows ball, and it's as simple as that. Like, he's, it's not, you might not see the immediate results from it in year one. But I think he's got a really good staff in place. I think he knows what he's doing. No doubt about it. He's familiar with Marshall. Now, as far as the talent goes, who they brought in and stuff, that remains to be seen. I think it's too early now to really know what they have, especially when you're playing, like, you go from being like Bellarmine to Purdue. I mean, how are you really going to be able to tell like what you have when you go from playing the 300s in RPI to playing almost top 5 team in the country? Like, you can't, that's not a very good match. You need it once they start hitting conference play, when they start playing teams in their conference consistently at their level, not bum teams, not all-time teams, just teams at their level. I think we'll be able to tell what they have. I mean, I think they got a good front court. I like Martin a lot. I like Anachili Killen. I like he's been around forever. They got pieces there. I question the shooters that they have a little bit. I'm not sure what they have there yet. Fricks has been good in years past and stuff like that. But like, I think that's one of the things that Dan was missing a lot of in those latter years, is he didn't have the sharp shooting that he had at one point, like the John Elmores and the CJ Burks and guys like that, Austin Luke for that matter. I mean, he had some guys. I mean, Kerfman was a really good 3-point shooter, but he also went through really cold spells, like really cold spells. And then, Kinsey wasn't as much about 3-point shooting as he was just all around, just doing whatever needed to be done. And, he had a nice team in place. It's just, I feel like for the offense that he was going to run, and he did run, you had to have like multiple sharpshooters, or else it just wasn't going to work the same. So I don't really think that's necessarily Horny's offense. I don't think he's trying to like steal anything from Dan or anything like that. But I think, in 2024, 2025 basketball, you got to have shooters that knock down a pretty high clip. I mean, that's, and that remains to be seen. If they have that, they haven't exactly been an offensive juggernaut so far. I mean, only scored 45 against Purdue. That is Purdue. That's an outlier. But I'll be really curious to see how they look here in the next month, put it that way. Because right now, I think it's to be determined, if you want to be perfectly honest. That's how I feel right now.
I want to know how they're going to look on Saturday, but now we'll dive into that a little bit more. We'll get more specific about some players and some stats here in a minute, but just for the the Marshall side of fans who may be listening and hearing about Hilltopper basketball for the first time in a few years, I just want to fill in. WKU last season we went 22-12. I mentioned earlier we were 8-8 in conference play. We did win our conference tournament there in Huntsville. 4 games in 4 days, went on to the NCAA tournament as a 15 seed. We played number 2 seed Marquette, which in my opinion, arguably was a potential 1 seed. They're, one of the higher 2 seeds, I do believe. Really good, really tough team. Actually, we were beating them at halftime, hung tight for the first half. The second half, though, they just wore us down with really good defense. And pulled away and won that game. But it was nice to be back in the NCAA tournament, just have that feeling, that excitement. Even the magical conference tournament run in Huntsville was just every day as we won a game, you would see just another sea of Hilltoppers come to Huntsville. And the next game's attendance would be almost double. And then we'd win another game, and then it's double again. And by the time we got to the championship game against UTEP, like it was a de facto home game for us. Granted, it was a 3.5 hour drive from Bowling Green, but man, there was so much excitement, and just it was nice to have that breath of fresh air with Steve Lutz and what he brought back to this program in just 1 year. Now, unfortunately, that got him poached. He ended up taking a job after the season ended to Oklahoma State. Best of luck to him. I don't hold any ill will towards him. Quite frankly, he set us up for success. We ended up promoting Hank Plona to the head coaching position. And Hank did an amazing job as far as retaining the staff. We only lost 1 staff member that went to Oklahoma State with Coach Lutz. And we only lost 2 transfers out. We had another guy that exhausted his eligibility. So we only lost 3 players from last year. We returned a lot of talent from that team that ended up winning the conference championship last year. So, high expectations coming into this year. We'll talk about that more in just a moment, but want to look at Marshall's season so far. I know, Trace, you just touched on a little bit. Currently you're 3-2. I think you play tonight. You play South Carolina State tonight as we record midday Wednesday. I'm not going to pencil that in as a win, but likely I'm guessing you're going to be 4-2 coming into our game. Your 2 losses have been to a really good Toledo team. I had to click on and see, how's this Toledo team doing? They're 5-2 right now on the year, so that's a good team that you all lost to, 90-80. Then obviously the game against number 6 Purdue, I mean, 80-45. I mean, that Purdue is known to be a tough, grinding, good defensive team. And actually, Coach Steve Lutz came from the Purdue tree. He was an assistant coach there. So, very familiar with that Purdue success, and they've just have been good for a long time. Then you also have wins versus Bellarmine, USI, and then I didn't know who that first team was. Davis Elkins, no idea.
Yeah, they're a small West Virginia college.
Okay, I was like, I have no idea who that was, but like you said, I think it's just a really mixed bag. It's really hard to tell what you know about this team. But Trace, I guess I'll ask you, just through 5 games, how are you feeling about this, Corny-led team, compared to the D'Antoni days? I know it's early in the tenure, but what differences do you see? What similarities do you see? What do you know about the team through 5 games?
A little bit. I don't know that you can draw too many similarities. There are always going to be some, because if you get an assistant from a coaching tree, there's always going to be something that they pull from that coach that they were working under. So you're going to see some things. I just don't think that they want to get up and down the floor like a D'Antoni team. They're not living and dying by that 3-point ball like Hilltopper fans will remember when they were coming to Diddle more regularly. I think this is something that you'll see them working the ball to Nate Martin more down low. You'll see them working the ball to Obina more down low. It's because you're trying to evolve. You're not evolve. You're trying to figure out the evolution of this team is trying to figure out who are our scorers, right? Because they dealt with injury to start the season. So they didn't even have the full complement of players that they were hoping to start the season. So I think to a certain degree, it's still a question mark to those guys in the locker room. Like, who are our guys? And the guys you can lean on that have been around for a couple of years. Trace mentioned Wyatt Fricks. He's been there for a few years. He's been a scorer. He's a guy that you can look to get double digits every single night or most nights. There are some guys that they did go get in the portal that I think are tasked with being, that point guard. Not that, I mean, it's hard to compare people to John Elmore, right? But it's that type of player that you need to make the offense work. And it's Florida A&M transfer point guard. He's a graduate transfer. He's been around with Jalen Spear. That's a guy that you're going to want to know. If he's healthy and comes out of this game tonight healthy and is a go in Bowling Green, that guy can be a problem for you because he's the guy that makes it all work, right? And another guy that I've seen that nobody really knew about that has come in and made some dazzling plays and had some really great games is a dude that Corny went up and got out of Canada. Dzane Mingo, 6'4", 185-pound junior guard. Who would have thought, right? You go into Canada and you bring out a guy that has been super productive for your team. So the evolution of this team continues, right? We don't know what we have. You guys probably are more comfortable with what you have than what Marshall is, okay? But you can count on massively impactful games, barring injury tonight, from Nate Martin, Obina, and you will see the offense probably go through Jalen Spear for sure. What if Wyatt Fricks has a hot hand? Wild card, right? If Mingo has a hot hand, wild card. Outside of those two down low, it's a lot of who's got the hot hand and who's going to have a good game.
Yeah, now WKU's entering this game. We are 3-3. Our current overall record. We have losses to Wichita State, Grand Canyon, and then most recently last night to number 8, University of Kentucky, like we've mentioned a couple times now. Our wins have come against Campbellsville, Lipscomb, and Jackson State. Now that Lipscomb team, picked to win their conference, so a tough, good win that we had. And then Jackson State also one of the tougher teams in the SWAC. So, kind of really had that same feeling of that mixed bag of, we had a couple good opportunities. We played a really good Wichita State team, which I think is picked like 3rd in the American, which is a really, top heavy UAB, Memphis, Wichita, who had a rough season last year, but much improved via the transfer portal. And then that Grand Canyon team, man, I mean, they're tough. They went to the NCAA tournament last year. Really tough team, lost to them on a last-second shot. I expect them to be good this year. And then, we saw UK firsthand last night. I mean, they are much improved from the Calipari years. Mark Pope brought in a lot of talent, and they play some good basketball. So, coming in with a 500 record, not surprising. Have lost to some good teams, have beat some teams that we should have beat, and then let a couple, potential upset wins kind of slip away from our fingers there. You talked about a couple of these guys. Marshall is currently led in scoring by Nate Martin, who's averaging 16.4 points per game, and also adding 8 rebounds per game. You talked about that double potential from him. Right there, almost averaging it, just a couple rebounds away. Then Obina, Anacholi Killen, try not to butcher that one, 12 points per game, 5.8 rebounds per game. So like you said, just a couple big bodies down there that are definitely going to be impactful, looking at Western Kentucky's roster. And then the third guy I'll mention as far as your leading scores, also in double figures, is Dezane Mingo, averaging 10.3 points per game, 3 rebounds per game, and 4.3 assists per game. So he really just looks at that like just a stat stuffer, kind of does it all, spark plug, just kind of everywhere. So it's nice to hear that you mentioned those names and then jump into the stats and they kind of jump off the page for you that, definitely those 3 guys. And then, some of the others that you talked about, we'll have to be aware of and keep our eye out for. As a team, you're averaging 75 points per game and you're allowing 70.4 points per game. I know it's really early in the season. You've got that, that one-off, that loss to Purdue, 45 points, that really kind of muddies up those averages. So I don't put a lot of stock into them. But looking at the Western Kentucky roster and who we're led by scoring by Don McHenry, who's averaging 15.8 points per game. He's our point guard. He's number 2. He's going to have the ball a lot. He's high volume. Get familiar. Know him, Herd fans. He will be the guy that, like I say, stirs the drink. He is the straw. Know that name. Our second leading scorer, Babacar Faye. He's our big man, our post presence. One of the 2, maybe 3 that you'll see in the game. He's not a big body per se. He's a more of a trim, slender guy. But he does average 15.2 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game. He's got really good footwork. He's really active on the offensive glass. He's just a really solid contributor to this team now that's been here multiple years as well. Then our third leading scorer is Julius Stedford. He's averaging 12.5 points per game. He is a true freshman that has been earning his time on the court. And if anybody happened to peek into that WKU game last night, you may not have. But if you did, yeah, there were times where he looked like the best player on the court. He's very assertive. He's very confident. He's very go get a bucket. There's not hesitation. There's not freshman turnovers and mistakes. Like, he looks like he belongs. He will be one of the first players off the bench. And quite frankly, I think he's in the conversation to eventually start earning some starting minutes. Like, he's that good as a true freshman. Now, if there's any P4 guys, stop listening. You can't have him. He's not available. Of course, my mind goes there. In this new era, I'm like, gosh, he's going to be expensive next year. But then our fourth leading scorer is Christian Lander. Yep. He's averaging 10.3 points per game. He came to us from Indiana University a couple years. Fun story. I actually got to interview him last year before the season. His dad played football here many years ago. He's from the Evansville, Indiana area. We actually play at Evansville this year, so that'll be a really fun and special game for him. Now, as a team, WKU is averaging 78.8 points per game. I think it's interesting that, you all mentioned the D'Antoni style, the fast-paced, a lot of threes. You can almost kind of look at Western today, how we're playing under Coach Plona. We are one of the fastest tempo and pace teams in the nation. Last year, I think under Coach Lutz, we were the fastest tempo and pace team in the country. And I think we're right there in that top 2 or 3 teams as far as pace goes. We want to score a lot of points. They're going to shoot a lot of threes, which is not something we saw, a lot under the Rick Stansbury era. We were pounding it down to, our big center, Charles Bassey, or letting Davion McKnight or Tavion Hollingsworth, go to work and get a bucket. This team is going to shoot a lot of threes. You're almost going to think you're watching Marshall from yesteryear. But defensively, we're also giving up a lot of points, 75.2 points per game. Now, Trace, just looking at these teams, just statistically, rosters, new coaches, I really feel like these teams are just very evenly matched. And I don't know, I didn't go check the ESPN Power the Matchup predictor. I assume it's leaning towards us. It is a home game for us. I haven't seen a betting line. I really think that we'll be a favorite in this game. But what do you think are keys to victory that Marshall needs to do to win this game?
Well, I think you have to feed Nate Martin. I think you have to go with the hot hand. I think Marshall's at a point right now where there's still a lot of unknowns, like we've said. So you need to have big games from your reliable guys that have been here for a while. The guys that are proven commodities at this point. I feel like that would be a big thing. I think I haven't really looked at a lot of the game by game stats, but like I feel like Marshall would have to be a pretty good rebounding team. I don't know that I haven't looked at the numbers or anything, but like I said, I think I do like their front court. I think they got quality guys down there, and I think that would help. I think you need to try to win the paint, try to win the rebounding margin a little bit. I mean, or at least you know what I'm saying. Don't get completely embarrassed in that regard. I think that would be good, and I think you got to have guys knock down some threes. I mean, you're going on the road, it's going to be a hostile environment, I'm sure. Saturday game, you need to have some guys hit some threes and kind of quiet the crowd, and try to assign as well and continue run. They might go. So you need some stuff like that. So I mean, it's really just basic principle, but I think they're extremely important in this team. I mean, you're on the road, and this is going to be, it's probably be Marshall's toughest well, it's obviously their toughest road game since besides Purdue to start the year. So like, this is going to be a tough game, and two programs that really know each other a lot and haven't played in a while, albeit, but it's going to be a very physical game. I'm sure they got to come out and match the physicality that Western throws at them. But I think they're always just simply got to make shots. I mean, it's as simple as that. And if you get to the charity stripe, hit them, knock them down, because that's been an issue this year. From what I've seen, is free throw shooting is not real great, which I feel like that's nothing new. I feel like that's kind of been the running theme for a while. I mean, there's a few years there with Elmore and Loop and West and Burks and guys like that can hit them pretty consistently at a 70-75% as a team, which is pretty rare nowadays. But now I would say they're nowhere close to that. So got to get to freebies as well. So that's kind of where I am with it, kind of all over the place, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a slugfest. I guarantee that. I don't know how this game's going to go. I know that at our pace and the tempo that we're going to play, we've got to make threes. We saw last night playing UK, we didn't hit as high a percentage of threes as we had been, customarily early in this season. And if we're not making threes, we're shooting a lot of them. I think we shot 28 versus UK, and I think we made 4, if I recall correctly. That's not a good percentage, and that's not how you go into somebody else's house and upset them. You're talking about rebounds and being a pretty good rebounding team. I looked at the stats. I think you are averaging 38 rebounds per game. We're averaging a little bit more, but I also know that we're playing a faster tempo, getting more possessions. I think we're averaging 41 rebounds per game. So I don't put a lot of stock in that, and I'm not saying we're a better rebounding team, because honestly, we don't have the big bodies that you all have. We have Babacar Faye. We have Blaze Keita, that's a transfer from Nebraska that'll get some play. And then we have Leroy Odahai that came from ODU that might get some run depending on foul trouble, etc. So, I think that, rebounding will definitely be a key, because you all have a couple big bodies. And if you're hitting the offensive glass and getting those extra possessions, there's a saying, second shots usually go in. So, you want to try to limit those offensive rebounds. We've got to make our threes. And then my third key to victory is we have to limit turnovers. And that, luckily, it hasn't been an issue early this season. But we did see last year, under Steve Lutz, playing this faster tempo pace of a game, that if we let turnovers get out of control, and basically, looking at it in the football sense, it's an empty possession. You didn't give yourself a chance to go down and score points, because we can be pretty efficient with the ball when we actually get a shot up. But if you're turning the ball over, and it's especially a live ball turnover where it's immediately going the other way for an easy shot or a layup, whatever, that really makes it difficult to win and hold serve here at home, which obviously both fan bases for, just this early in the season, it's non-conference, really just bragging rights wise. We both want to win this game. Trace, I've got to get a game MVP from you. Who do you think has to be the standout and the star? And I also want to get a score prediction from you. I know that's a lot, and we're just throwing it at the wall to see what sticks. But I want to hear, who do you think wins?
Well, let's start with the MVP because I feel a little safer going on that route. Nate Martin for Marshall, MVP of the game. He's been that for basically this will be the second year running now. I think he's going to have a big game, double-double, probably 15 and 10, something around there. I mean, that's pretty much standard for him. I mean, that's what he averages, so that's pretty much what's to be expected. So I think he's going to be the guy to lean on there. Score prediction, I knew this was going to be brought up, and I've been thinking about it all day, but I really haven't set on one, so I'm just going to go with the homer pick. Marshall, 70, Western Kentucky, 67.
It was right there.
I know. I lobbed it up to you. Right. I was going to let you. All right. So KD.
67-66. Changed my mind. I changed my mind.
KD, do you want to riddle us with who you think has to be the MVP for Marshall to win this game?
Oh no!
And an alley-oop score prediction from you.
Not a rim out in the Conference USA Championship game.
Appreciate that.
Trace is right. It's got to be Nate Martin because he's the most consistent guy, the most consistent scorer and rebounder, the most physical guy down low. He will go toe-to-toe with whoever you've got and try to outbody and outbang all night long. So unless you get him in early foul trouble, he's going to be a menace for you. You know, it's just what he does. And yeah, it's 67-66. That's got to be the pick, right? Because that's the meaningfulest of meaningful games. That's what history tells us the scores are between these two teams. So give me the Herd in the upset, 67-66. Why not? Because this will be a game that if Cornelius Jackson goes into Bowling Green, Kentucky, into Diddle Arena, gets a win over Western Kentucky, that's the type of thing. I'm not saying it's going to bring waves of fans into the Cam Henderson Center, but it is the type of thing that matters to enough fans. They might go, you know what? I think I'll go check out the Herd. This might be a good team. You know, it's one of those kind of things. And hopefully it's a similar situation with Coach Plona and you guys. You go in there and you hold serve at home, you beat the Herd, and that might say to enough fans to go, you know what? Maybe we do need to go check out the Tops this year. That kind of thing. So I don't like to talk like too much trash on attendance and stuff because we all have our problems with that stuff. But I saw one of your most recent games. I saw your circle of, our circle of people. It's something like 2,600, and I thought, man, that ain't the diddle that I know, and I know it's not the one that you know. So if this one can light a fire under a few more butts to get a few more butts in a few more seats, that's really what it's all about. And if you can pick up a win to boot, all the better.
Yeah. So the recent attendance woes are well documented early in this season. It's not. I don't understand it because we always say you win games, they'll show up. We won the conference championship we had more people in Huntsville for those 3-4 games than what we've had in Diddle for a few games this year. So it's a little bit baffling why the fans have been slow to show up. I can't explain it. I wish I could, but I know a game like this one, if you drop it, it's not going to get any better. To your point earlier. We've got to hold serve. We've got to win this game. We've been begging for it on the schedule for years. Thank you for making it happen, ADs, but we've got to win this game. Quite frankly, early in our season, we've lost some tough matchups, and this is definitely a name matchup that when the schedule was released, we put that out, November 30th, confirmed date, sourced, circle it. We have to win this ball game. So I think to win this ball game, it's going to have to start and end with Don McHenry, our point guard, number 2. I think he is very, I don't want to say streaky, but we saw a little bit of a cold spell versus UK. I think he ended the game with 9 points, not a high shooting percentage. He's a guy that can go create his own shot. He can get to the hole. He can get hot and hit 2, 3, 4 3-pointers in a row. Can score at all 3 levels, at the rim, mid-range, and 3. So he's someone that if his offense gets going, it makes it a lot easier for the other guys to start scoring as well, feeding off of him and his distribution of drawing that defense into him. So I think it has to start with us for Don McHenry. I think he has to be the MVP of this game. He's in that conversation for Conference USA Player of the Year, right there with Daniel Batcho at Louisiana Tech. He's that good of a player. I think he'll get some pro considerations after his college years are done. I don't think it'll be NBA, but he's going to go play somewhere professionally. He's that good of a player. So it has to be Don McHenry as my MVP. And then my score prediction, I can't go as low as you all are going with our tempo and our pace. If it's that low a game, it's going to definitely be in your favor, because it means we're missing a lot of shots, or you are locking us down defensively, blocking shots, turnovers, etc. If we're going to win this game, like I hope and I think we are, I think we're going to score over 80 points. I think we're going to win 82-74. You mentioned earlier, Trace did making free throws. The funny thing, we take so many threes, we don't shoot a lot of free throws like we used to in the Stansbury yesteryear. And we do a pretty good job of not fouling a lot with the defense that we play. So I hope that continues. I don't want to have guys get in foul trouble, be on the bench, and have to be playing reserves. I want the starters and the 3-4 rotation guys to be in the game. But give me 82-74. I'm really hoping for just a good game. Obviously, a win. We got to have a win. Both of us are bragging rights wise. We've got to get a win, and just our fan attendance, and just going into the middle part of our non-conference schedule. But man, I can't believe two things. One, that we're 3 days away from this game being played. Two, that we're pushing an hour. I told wife it would be 20. I told wife it would be 20 to 30 minutes. We'd knock this thing out, clock in, clock out, and talk some herd and some hoops and some moonshine throwdown and reminisce. But here we are. We're pushing an hour, man. But I really appreciate both of you all. Like Trace has said, this has really been just kind of nostalgic. Us three just getting back together. We're back in the lab, talking sports, talking games, talking keys to victory and MVPs and just all this great stuff that I really miss it on a consistent basis, having this Marshall rivalry just be something that's always on the schedule. And I hope that changes across all sports, football especially, basketball. I want to be a consistent thing. But I have to thank both of you all. It's obviously the holiday season. There's a lot of hustle and bustle. We're all busy. We're all working. We all got obligations. But both of you all took the time out of your days, work-wise, basketball, family, etc., to be here and to join us and just get the band back together. I said it at the top of the show. I'm going to say it at the end of the show. We got the band back together. It feels so good. It feels right. But, I'm really looking forward to the game on Saturday. Win, lose, or draw. I'm going to say good game, Marshall. And, that's my final words. I'll hit it over to you, Trace. Give us your final words. And then KD, I think you remember the drill, how to take us out of here.
I think he's got it.
I do.
No, I was just going to I appreciate the offer. I was looking forward to it, hoping we could all get on and do it. Like I said, it's been 3 years since we've done consistent, us three doing it. It's been a while, long time coming. Glad we were able to get on here. Should be a good game Saturday. A lot of things going on right now athletically for Marshall and WVKU. So it's just, and you talking about needing to have this game on the schedule in the future. And all I'm saying is some of the football homes I could totally do without. Why do they not have Western instead of Eastern Michigan and Kennesaw State or whatever? Why are we playing these teams? I mean, I don't understand it. That should be out of those teams. I would 10,000% rather be playing Western Kentucky. It just would make a whole lot more sense. So hopefully that gets taken care of in the future. I mean, there's fewer and fewer opportunities to play true Power 4 teams in home, so it's a lot fewer opportunities. There's no excuse not to make it happen. So hopefully it starts happening more. We can get back on here and keep talking about it. That's awesome.
No, I got to say a couple of things. Number one, I did not say this in the lead-in. I got to give shout out to Tyler Bailey too. He does a great job with you. This is not just I know you do a great job, and I want to commend you for that. But he does not go unnoticed. Right, as you get into the podcasting world and you find yourself listening to podcasts, and you're like, I can't listen to that anymore. you guys are very listenable. That's why I say that Hilltopper fans are fortunate to have a show like that. So, Tyler, I hate that you couldn't be here because I would have loved to have shared the screen with you as well. I think you and Steven are phenomenal together, and it really sucks that you weren't here. Number two, I think that Trace is also right. This game needs to happen more and more. And especially in sports where it's easier to schedule a game, a baseball midweek, a softball midweek, right? A men's and women's basketball game. Football, I get it. It's a little tougher, but the series still needs to happen. And if you're in our circles on the Thundercast and whenever we talk about conference realignment, and we, hot and heavy when Texas State looked like they were ready to go, the number one team most fans wanted to add back to the Sun Belt was Western Kentucky in the West Division, right? Because it just fits. It makes sense. And your fans may feel some type of way, but let's be honest. The Sun Belt is better than the Conference USA. It is. It's a better conference, like geographic makeup. It's more fan-friendly. It's just better, right? And I'm not tossing shade. I'm not. I think a lot of your fans would like to be in the Sun Belt with the teams that are there versus traveling across the country like we all had to do, for a Wednesday volleyball game in El Paso. I appreciate the fact that our ADs were able to come together, our head coaches were able to come together and make this game happen. It's fun to talk about it. It's great to be back and share the screen with you guys and share the airwaves with you guys. I will say this, Herd fans, if you're listening and you've made it this far, an hour into the show, you can get tickets to the game at Ticketmaster.com. They're pretty cheap. It's like somewhere between $15 and $30. You can get tickets to the game, and there are enough available that you can basically choose the view that you want. So if you're on the fence about going, go support the Herd. See Corny get a big dub on the road in BGKY like we all want to see. But that's it. I'm gonna get off my soapbox. I appreciate you, Steven, for asking me to do this. I will do the show. I will do the Topper Talk anytime. Yep. I don't know how valuable I can be, but I just like to podcast. It was great to share the screen with Trace again. This brings back the nostalgia factor for me is big right now, really big right now. So let's see if we can get this right one time. Let's take it out of here, Trace. You know how we used to do it, so let's see if we can get it right on a one and done and get the heck out of here. Trace,
we're gonna run it back. Go Herds, baby.
Moff.
Go Tops.
It's the Moonshine Throwdown. We'll see you next week. Later,
guys.